Hey y'all, welcome back to the Hickson Diaries, and welcome if this is your first time visiting us. It's really good to have you here. And if you're watching this, then there is a very good chance that you saw our last conversation. Say that video struck a nerve would be the understatement of the century. The comment section was on fire, which I'm very grateful for. You shared all your stories, you shared your frustrations, you shared your love for your country and the allies across the pond. When I look at the analytics of our channel and our community, and I'm answering comments and I'm reading your stories that you're so lovely and gracious enough to share, I'm seeing that most of us are in the same boat. I mean, we're not trying to backpack across the world, living in cheap hostels or trying to find the good nightlife spots. A lot of us are just average men and women that are a little bit older, a little bit more established in life, people who are valuing stability and integrity and security. And when you compare two nations like the United States versus the United Kingdom, I think we really have to look at it through that specific lens, the lens that has a little bit more experience. The lens of knowing that life isn't always a straight line and definitely isn't always better if you take the easiest path. I'm moving away from the superficial, diving into harder truths, and I'm going to start talking about the three pillars that I believe really define a society and the changes and differences really between the UK and the US, which is including healthcare, safety, and the concept of freedom. And these three things happen to be at the top of our list when we made our decision to leave the United States and move to England. These are the values that determine our actual quality of life, especially as we get older. And they're things I think that are on the tops of everybody's mind nowadays, given the climate we're in. I just think it's time for us to speak about some of this stuff more honestly, respectfully, of course, and hopefully with a clear understanding of where both sides stand. So here we go. Let's talk about it. It's simple to say that I love America because the houses are bigger, or I can make more money, or I have access to more things. I love the landscape. I love the weather. Or I love living in the UK because pubs are awesome and I like the walking culture and I like the proximity to Europe. It's not that any of those things are invalid or untrue, or even things that you shouldn't take into account when you're having these types of conversation. I mean, I do miss having my big house with my huge bedroom and my king size bed by far. And I do enjoy going to pubs and having a pub lunch or Sunday roast and just relaxing and enjoying the coziness, especially this time of year. But big houses don't matter if you're afraid to sleep in them. Good schools mean nothing if you don't know if your child's going to return from them. And cozy pubs don't help if you can't afford a doctor's visit if you fall on your way home. Today, I just wanted to kind of talk about the differences in a little bit more of an honest, real light. And these differences that underpin these two amazing nations, and just talk about why I think the American system prioritizes the individual over everything else, and while the British system seems to just prioritize the collective. But more importantly, how does that actually feel when you're living the day to day? Because not a lot of people talk about that. Not a lot of people want to be that vulnerable. And I have to admit, I am definitely one of those people that felt that way for a while. But if we're going to be honest and we're going to be real about what the journey is, and if this is going to be a true diary, we have to be vulnerable sometimes. We have to have the hard conversations sometimes, right? Today I'm approaching this with the core values of my personal life as well as the core values of what I feel about this channel. Honesty and respect. And I am not here to bash one side or the other or prop up one side or the other. And I am just trying to look at the trade-offs from a really realistic lens, because that's what real life is. No matter where you live, you have to consider their series of trade-offs and what complications you're willing to put up with or deal with or get through as opposed to what you're not. And that compromise is something we all learn as we grow and mature and age. And as we grow and mature and age, we also find things that we are unwilling to waver on. We're unwilling to trade in for anything else. So for me, one of the biggest trade-offs is healthcare. Now, I kind of did a video that went into some more deep dive about the healthcare systems between the US and the UK specifically. But I wanted to talk a little bit deeper about the anxiety that you feel with the US healthcare system versus the queue that you get with the UK healthcare system. Because I really truly believe that we don't understand the gravity of either. I certainly didn't understand the gravity fully until I moved and started to experience the different healthcare system here in the UK. I think that there's one topic that divides the Atlantic more so than any other. It's definitely how we handle our bodies when they start to fail us, which I'm definitely feeling more and more every single day and reminded of how old I am every day when I get out of bed. Let's just have an honest conversation. This isn't theoretical politics for us, especially us in my age group. This is a reality. This is something that we're facing more and more every single day. This is something that we have to consider the gravitation of and the effects of every single minute of our lives, especially as we get older. And I think there's a difference between, in my opinion anyway, a difference between a comfortable retirement and a nightmare. Let me explain that a little bit further. In the United States, the healthcare system is just such a paradox. It's so unique and different from anything else that I've even heard about in most other, at least developed nations in the world. It's a source of technological marvel and financial terror at the same time. The quality of care, if you have really, really good insurance, if you have excellent insurance and access to top tier facilities in the United States, or you have unlimited funds or the resources to access that stuff without the insurance, then arguably is the best in the world. You have amazing doctors. You have amazing technological advances. You have lots and lots of things at your fingertips if you have unlimited resources. And that's why a lot of people who are in that position in life come to the United States in order to have their medical needs met because they have a faster way of getting to those results that they're looking for. Speed is the currency in the United States. If you have a suspicious lump, a bad knee, a heart flutter, and you have the money, you can get it sorted within a week or two, right? There's a sense of urgency. You're the customer, the doctor is the service provider, you are in control. But the anxiety that comes with the American healthcare system is quite palpable, especially for anybody who does not have access to those unlimited resources or means. I have spoken to friends in the United States who are absolutely terrified of retiring before they're eligible for Medicare. I know people that are actually on Medicare and still need to find a supplement because the Medicare, which is the public option program for retirees in the United States, doesn't cover everything. And they're in the retirement age, 60s, 70s, and beyond. I've heard stories of people taking Ubers to the hospital while in the middle of having a heart attack because the ambulance fee was just too high for them to think that they might afford it because they knew they were going to have to get bills for their treatment and stuff as well. If you think about the psychology of that for a moment, there's a very specific type of weight that you have to carry on your shoulders in that situation. See, the anxiety doesn't come from whether or not you will be able to get treated. The anxiety comes from not knowing if you're going to be able to afford to be treated. Not knowing if you're going to get to a point where you might have to mortgage your house or possibly go bankrupt or even be left to die because you can't afford the treatment. That's the main difference between the healthcare systems, in my opinion. That type of system creates a society where you're constantly guarding your nest egg. You aren't saving for a rainy day. You're saving for a hurricane. One bad diagnosis, one loophole in your insurance coverage, one misstep, and your whole lifetime of hard work vanishes in a second. It creates a background hum of stress that many Americans don't even realize is there till they leave. Now, if you pivot to the excuse me, if you pivot to the UK with the NHS, the National Health Service care is based on need, is not based on the ability to pay. You walk into a hospital, you get treated, and you walk out without opening your wallet. Of course, it's not free, right? You pay into the system from your wages. And if people like me who are residents and guests or have some kind of temporary visa, you have to pay a little bit of a premium into the system in order to have access to it. But there is no billing department in the NHS. There are no deductibles, there's no co-pays, there's no in-network or out-of-network doctors. For someone who's in the second half of their life, as I am, the peace of mind that comes from knowing you will never ever go bankrupt due to the possibility of getting cancer or some other life-threatening illness is absolutely priceless. It allows you to breathe in a way that is not possible in the American system. It allows you to retire without having the sword of Damocles hanging over your head or your bank account. The American emotion is anxiety constantly, while the British emotion is there, but it's more frustration. Deep, grinding frustration, definitely. NHS is under such enormous pressure right now. It is cracking a bit at the seams. Acknowledge that. If you have a heart attack, they will save you. And the quality of life care can kind of be a waiting game. And sometimes there's misdiagnosis and sometimes overwhelmed staff aren't paying attention and giving the proper care that they absolutely should be. You need a hip replacement, you might wait a year or more in pain. You may need to see a specialist for something that isn't life-threatening, but is life-altering, but you have to get into the queue, you have to wait. And in Britain, although it is very well known that they don't mind a queue, but when your health is on the line, obviously that heightens the emotion that you feel like it shouldn't be as long. It certainly shouldn't be a year. This is the trade-off, though, that I mentioned earlier. In the US, if you have the means, you can pay for speed, you have access with your money. And the risk is financial ruin. Or in the UK, you can pay for universal coverage with your time. And the risk is waiting in pain. Neither is ideal. But which has the better outcome? And of course, that's subjective based on your unique, situation. Whatever choice you would make entirely depends on your personal values, your bank account, and your situation. Do you value the security of the collective safety net and knowing that the poorest person in the street gets the same treatment as the richest? Or do you value the individual liberty to purchase the best care available immediately? Or hope that you're going to get the care you need at the time you need it, provided, you have the means to do so. It's the question of a safety net versus a speed and monetary advantage. This leads me directly into the second pillar, safety. I've made it very, very well known. I have not hidden at all that safety was a huge factor in our decision to move. But I'm not just talking about my personal experience, and I'm certainly not just talking about crime statistics, because crime exists everywhere. And all of that is very important. But my commentary is really about the feeling of being safe, the psychological state of feeling secure in your environment when you walk out your front door. Whenever I discuss any comparisons between the United States and the United Kingdom, the conversation inevitably always turns to guns at some point. It's the elephant in the room that even Americans don't want to acknowledge, but it can't really be ignored. For my British viewers, and indeed many Europeans and others, the American gun culture is often baffling. The idea that neighbors might be armed or some random person that you're in the same coffee shop with is carrying or that you need to consider active shooting drills when dropping your kids off at school. It's just so foreign to the British psyche and those beyond. Because in the UK, police generally don't even have firearms. The visual language of authority is different. It's so much less militarized outside the United States. And this changes the atmosphere on the street. In the UK, fear is rarely about lethal force. It's more about antisocial behavior. Teenagers causing trouble, petty theft. Yes, knife crime is entirely real and very prominent in specific areas, of course. But generally, you aren't going to have a mass knifing, and you don't have to worry about your child being knifed on school property. And if you get into an argument in a parking lot in England or Scotland or Wales or Northern Ireland, your primary fear is a fist fight, possibly a knife, which is definitely legit, but rarely a fear for your life. What a lot of people don't understand outside of America is that this creates a baseline of relaxation in public spaces. You can walk through a field or a city center without that low level anxiety that's constantly with you, causing you to be hyper vigilant. You're not scanning big crowds to look for a bulge under a jacket or someone lurking around and wondering why. You don't go to places like Minneapolis and worry about walking out of your front door. I want to be fair to the American perspective, of course, because it is a perspective that's rooted in history and geography. The United States offers a different kind of safety. It's really a safety built on the individual, built on this idea of self-reliance. Many Americans carry guns or own guns because of that feeling it gives you, that you feel more safe because you feel like I can protect myself and my family with this weapon. Many Americans just subscribe to that version of safety or that illusion of security because they have more control to defend themselves if chaos ensues. They look at the UK, where you cannot carry pepper spray, you can't carry a baton, you cannot carry anything for self-defense. And they feel that the state has stripped them of their right to protect their family. To an American mindset, and this is really, really important that people understand, you're relying entirely on police. You're relying entirely on the state that Americans are born and bred to be questioned, to be wary of, to protect your safety and security. That presents a level of vulnerabilities that Americans are not comfortable. We're taught not to be comfortable with anyway. So it really comes down to having two definitions of safety. The British definition is freedom from the presence of lethal weapons, while the American definition is the freedom to possess any means of protection, and that you have the right to implement that protection on any given day as long as it's in self-defense. I think this is really, really important for men and women to consider, especially if you have children or grandchildren or any kids in your life, and especially if you are, midlife like I am. It's not that anybody in America necessarily is looking for trouble. They're going to be able to walk their dogs at night without any worry, just like most British people do. We all want to feel like our homes are our sanctuaries. We all want to feel like our neighborhoods will stick up for us, our communities will be there, and they're comfortable and they're looking out for each other. And we all want to know that the kids that are in our life, the young people that are our future, that we love so dearly, are safe when they leave our arms, when they leave our grasp. And in my personal experience, the UK just offers a softer environment for all of that. It just feels less on edge. It just feels less ready to fight at the drop of a hat. But the US offers a sense of harder security, where property rights and self-defense are enshrined in our culture and in our laws. And I think that this ties back to the most important thing that I've discovered living here in the UK is the community aspect. Living here abroad, safety is a community project. It's something we all pay into a system for. It's something that we all take individual responsibility for, but on a level of not upsetting the herd. We give up the right to weapons so everyone in the community is safer. And in the US, safety is an individual project, much like most other things in the United States. I need to secure my home. I need to make sure my family is safe. I have to protect my kids. Both have their merits and their place, but they also result in very, very different atmospheres when you're walking down the street on a random Tuesday. And I think that that is the concept that Americans can't grasp about being across the pond and vice versa. The last thing I want to talk about was freedom between the two areas. This is probably the most abstract point, but I think it's a very, very important point, especially when you consider how America and Great Britain's relationship has evolved over the past few centuries. I think this word gets thrown around a lot, obviously, especially in the States, which is the land of the free. But what does it actually mean when you compare it to life outside of America? And I think that's really important to talk about. There's a famous philosophical distinction between freedom to and freedom from, which a lot of my lovely British community members have often reminded me of and exposed me to. And has definitely changed my frame of mind and how I approach things on the topic of freedom. Because I think it explains almost everything about the cultural clashes between the two nations. The United States is just the ultimate champion of freedom too. We have the right to do this. You have the freedom to succeed. You have the freedom to fail. You have the freedom to build a massive business. You have the freedom to buy a gun. You have the freedom to say almost anything without legal repercussions. I mean, it's a society that's built on the potential of the individual. That's the whole American dream that we're sold in our lives. It's exciting. It's very motivating. It's dynamic, and it's the land of opportunity because the ceiling of those freedoms is infinitely high. There's no cap. There's no level that you're going to get to, and that's it. You can go as high as your ambition takes you in the United States, but the floor is very, very low. You can fall really hard. And if you fail, there's no safety net. There's nothing to catch you if you fall. There's nothing to help you rebuild if you need to start over. In the United Kingdom, much of Europe, and many other nations beyond, it leans more towards freedom from. Freedom from the worry of healthcare bills. Freedom from the fear of gun violence. Freedom from the anxiety of total destitution. Freedom from living on the streets. And in order to achieve this, the UK imposes more rules, more regulations. Yes, higher taxes, perhaps a bit more of a nanny state vibe. You give up some of that freedom too in order to enjoy that freedom from. Again, it's a perspective thing, right? A young man in his 20s, the American version is extremely intoxicating. I mean, I remember being someone who just graduated high school, just entering college, getting my first taste of freedom and, being on my own and living my own way. Yeah, I wanted to conquer the world. I can see why that's so enticing for younger people. Your whole life is ahead of you and you seem like you have endless opportunity. Why wouldn't you try to capitalize on that? You want the ceiling to be high because you want to get to the best of your potential and well beyond. But when you start to mature and get older, I think we look at this, at least as I'm looking at it in the second half of my life, the British version just starts to look much more appealing. The freedom from worry becomes a luxury in itself. Like I consider myself so lucky that I am able to complete the seemingly, tedious task of raising my child, which never really ends, but to the second half of her childhood at least, in an environment that wants her to be safe above most other things. I think that this is why we see such a divide in the comments on this channel, because there's lots of Americans that feel triggered and defensive about protecting the freedoms to do things, which I completely understand because I grew up in that and spent most of my life in that environment. And I do think that there is a lot of opportunity in America for a lot of people. That is why it's such an immigration heavy state. It's not just about geography and it's not just about their surface levels of coffee versus tea, right? It's it's a difference in life stages and it's a difference in priorities. If you're still climbing the mountain, you might be willing to risk a fall or a trip or a stumble. But if you're looking to enjoy the view without any of that, it might be a different environment that you're looking for, which I guess is where I ended up. So where does that leave us? As I said at the start, there is no such thing as a perfect country. There's only the country that aligns best with your current values, right? So here at the Hickson Diaries, I try really hard to focus on honesty and respect and hope. Honesty compels us to admit that both the US and the UK have serious flaws. Respect means we don't mock the other side for choosing a different path. And hope is knowing that whatever system that we live in, we can find our own peace and build our own communities. I know Sunday is a special day for a lot of people watching this channel. It's a day of reflection, it's a day of rest and recharge, and it's a day of, you know, having deep conversations. At least it is in my family. So, which version of freedom appeals to you more at where you are in your life? The freedom to do or the freedom from? What complications are you willing to put up with to achieve your personal goals? Which environment fits you better? For me, at this stage of my life anyway, I am definitely doing better in the UK. 20 years ago, had I had the opportunity to leave, I couldn't say for certainty that I would have. But I am very, very glad to have the opportunity now. And I'm very glad to have this community now to have these open conversations with and to have this back and forth and be able to pin down some of these really large concepts and really ultimately be real conversation. To me, that is how you build communities and that's how you feel safe and secure. And that's how you find your safety nets. That's what freedom is in my eye. And that's what freedom is ultimately to me. Thank you all for listening. Take care, stay safe, stay warm, and I will see you next time.